Okay, joining me on the big interview tonight, we'll be talking to one of Ireland's top showbiz journalists. He's made the front pages over the years, writing about many top celebrities, but what happens when he actually makes the news himself? We're going to find out tonight for the first time on the big interview with Paul Martin. How are you, sir?
I'm slightly scared now after that introduction. I mean, you know, the problem with you, Robin, is you know where all the bodies are buried, right? And I can't hide anything from you, and not that I would anyway. So, yeah, how am I? I'm absolutely dunging it.
You shouldn't be. You're
no,
used
I'm not.
to
You know
this.
me. I'm well used to it, absolutely.
You're used to
I have an elephant skin.
You're used to asking the questions, though. But
I am.
But do you like it when the tables are turned on you?
No. Clearly, of course I don't. Who does?
We'll start off nice and easy. We'll start off right back to the start. So what was it that made you want to be a journalist?
Honestly, my dad was a journalist. He was an editor of a newspaper in England. I grew up in England. My parents were from Northern Ireland. They moved over during the Troubles. And so I was born over there. And I just remember, Robin, being 100% honest with you, I just remember, like, even from the age of 4, going into my dad's, he was the editor, or the sports editor at the time of the Windsor, Slough and Eton Observer.
Right.
And I would go in there and spend Saturdays in there with him. He was a workaholic. He's the hardest, got the best working ethic I've ever seen. So he would go in there on Saturday and get other parts of the paper edited and all. I just loved the smell of the ink on the typewriters and the Tipp-Ex, and sounds like I've kind of got some weird drug addiction, doesn't it? Like I love to, you know. But you know what I mean? Back then there was a smell in a newsroom, and it was the ink, and the printing press was all there. Yeah. And I just fell in love with that. So I used to make newspapers from the age of 7 called the Martin Times. Brilliant. And I'd bring them out once a week and put them through the post box, and it'd be all like, the sport would be all my Subbuteo results. Yeah. And then it'd be like, I always needed a really big splash. Even at 7, 8, 9 years old, I knew I needed a big front page splash each week. So it might be like, you know, my sister Suzanne gets grounded for 2 days exclusive and then it'd be the whole story, you know. So I just always loved it.
Brilliant.
I was fascinated with it. Still am.
So then how did it happen? How did you get the first gig in the newspaper then?
Moved back over here as at Ballymena Academy, and I went into the editor of the Ballymena Times, a guy called Lyle McMullen, who's still around somewhere. And I went into there age 17 and said, Lyle, I've got a proposition for you. I was never behind the door. Surprise, surprise. Yeah. And I was like, Lyle, I've got a proposition for you. Can I have a column? Which is a ridiculous thing to say. You just go in and say, give me a column. I think I actually said, give me a column. Yeah. And he was like, he goes, well, what are you thinking? I'm saying, well, you never see a young columnist in your newspaper. It's always like old people. Yeah. You know, which to me at that age, an old person was like 25. Yes, yeah. And he goes, I think you might be onto something there. So he got his photographer down, did one of these kind of shots, you know, for the column byline. He said, right, your first column's next week. So my very first column was, the following day I was at the academy and all these French students were over visiting, you know, in an exchange program. Yeah. And they were all lining up in the canteen, and it was during the British beef kind of mad cow disease thing. Yes, yeah. And I remember all the French students started crying. Right. They're only 17. They started crying when they realised it was British beef was on the menu. It was all sacre bleu. And I made it the lead story of my column, which is quite a ballsy thing to do because I was that's my grammar school, that's where my education. And the headline was Sacre Bleu, we've just scoffed some British beef, and it was my whole column was about this, you know, disaster. And then, of course, I'm sitting in maths class the next day, and next minute the door knocks. Paul, it was Hilary Taylor, who was a horrendously strict woman. Paul, the headmaster wishes to see you in his office, and of course I go down there and he's sitting with his copy of the Ballymena Times in my first column. And I walked in true diva fashion straight. He goes, I hope you're not bringing me down here to tell me what I should be writing in my column. We have a free press in this country, and it will remain a free press, and all of this. And I was horrendous. You have no idea. But that was my very first column. And then, of course, then I was annoying people, Robin. Yes. Then you ended up in the newsletter, didn't you? I ended up in the newsletter. So my dad became the editor of the newsletter. You can imagine that. Oh, nepotism is alive and well. He's only got a job because his dad is the editor of the newsletter. Not quite true. What happened is I left school when I was 18, and I knew that all the newspapers wanted staff in during the summer. Mm-hmm. So I rang them up. Rick Clark rang up the news editor, and I said, look, can I come and work for you for free for the summer? First day I was in there, loved it. I was out getting stories and everything. Nothing major, but, you know, learning the skills of writing a story, editing a story, you know, what you can say, what you can't say, all of that. Then the problem was my dad went off for 2 months to Australia to get remarried. And when he was away in Australia, the news desk carried on ringing me every day saying, we'll bring you in on a shift, we'll bring you in on a shift. 100 quid a day or whatever it was back then, probably about 10p a day. But in my mind, it was 100 quid a day. So they kept bringing me in. Then my dad got back from Australia and he said, this looks really bad. So the news desk really wanted me because I was getting the big front pages. My dad says, this looks really bad. You can't work here anymore because it looks like nepotism. And that's what everybody was saying. But thankfully, a month later, the Daily Mirror launched an Irish edition, Northern Irish and Southern Irish edition of the paper. And they were part of the same newspaper group as the newsletter, right? They set up in the same offices as the newsletter on the same floor and took over half the floor. And I walked over to Craig Mackenzie, Kelvin Mackenzie's brother, who's real like, get me a front page. And I said, can I have a job? I will not let you down, da 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 da. And he gave me a job on the spot.
Wow.
And the job he gave me was showbiz editor of the flipping Daily Mirror in Ireland.
Excellent.
Of course, even then, of course, he would say, well, he only got the job because of his dad. They hated each other. Craig Mackenzie and my dad hated each other. He wasn't giving me a job for my dad, I promise you.
Wow.
And as you know, eventually you can only stand on your own scoops anyway. I had to prove myself.
And talking about the Mirror, years later, you would then become the youngest editor.
Youngest ever editor of a newspaper in Ireland.
That was the Irish Sunday Mirror, wasn't it?
That's when I knew I was going to get sacked, because anytime you become an editor, the next from there you get sacked, usually about 2 years later, which did happen. But so I was showbiz editing the Irish Mirror, and when I was 32, they kept my boss, John Kierans, who is still the editor of the, much bigger than that, I'm sure it's a bigger title he's got now, but he's still the editor of the Irish Mirror. He was my mentor in many, many ways. He came to me and said, Paul, look, I know you're young, but you can do this. And he gave me a chance to do it. And I did do it. I did it for about 2.5 years. And we put out some really good papers. People always say I'm very lucky. I always manage to, get out of situations that really should end careers and things like that. I've done a very good job trying on numerous occasions to get my own career ended. But about 3 weeks after I got the gig as editor of the Irish Sunday Mirror, or the youngest ever editor of the Irish Sunday Mirror, the News of the World went down under. So you can imagine at that time there was no Sun on Sunday. It was the News of the World and the Sunday Mirror. I know the Sunday World and Sunday Life are here, but I'm talking about the South. And so you had the News of the World, the Sunday Mirror, and the Sunday World. When one of those three biggest Sundays, and the News of the World was the biggest part of the Sunday World, went under, my circulation doubled overnight. So then it became really big, as in, this is a big responsibility now, we can't mess this up. So I did it. I can't believe it. 32 years old editing a newspaper.
Brilliant.
But I have full respect to my boss at the time, John Moe, for giving me the opportunity to do that, because it's incredible. It was an incredible opportunity.
You're well known for all the big celebrity interviews you've done over the years. Who was your first big one?
Oh boy, the first big one was probably Will Smith, who answered my phone for me during the interview because it started ringing.
Wow.
And it's one of my friends. It's like, yo, real Fresh Prince. This is Paul's phone. He can't come to the phone right now. Can I help you? Still didn't say who it was. And they were like, well, you could sort of hear on the kind of speakerphone-y kind of device that it was like, it's just wondering, it's so-and-so, Gary or whatever from the office there. Could you get him to give me a wee ring when he gets a chance? No problem. I'll just tell you who I am, just in case he forgets to ring you. You can say, his friend told you that he was to ring you. It's Will Smith here. And the phone went dead. He hung up. He thought it was a wind-up. It was Will Smith. Shortly after that, I interviewed Mariah Carey in bed.
Wow.
And that was in the Clarence Hotel in Dublin. And they said to me, there was only one interview. Sony Music said, we're doing one interview with Mariah Carey, right? When she comes to Dublin, she's doing the Late Late Show, and she's going to do one press interview, and it's going to be you. Because I said, right, I'll have a bit of that. And they said, right, come down to the Clarence Hotel, which is obviously Bono's hotel, and they said she'll do this 20-minute interview with you. So I went there, went to the Clarence Hotel, went up to the penthouse suite there. She was in for less than 12 hours in Dublin that day. She's flying back on a private jet that night after the Late Late Show. There was 28 suitcases, because I remember writing about it, 28 massive suitcases, 18 staff, most of them that she'd flown in with her, and it's for a 20-minute interview with me and obviously a Late Late Show. But when I did my interview with her, she insisted on doing it in bed.
Right, okay.
The interview had to be done in bed. This is where I do all my interviews. I'm like, yeah, right, it's just because me. But unfortunately, I subsequently found out, yes, it is the way.
Yeah.
But so we were sitting in bed, and I had my dictaphone out, and I'm like, dictaphone, Robin, okay? Because we're going down, we're talking about Mariah Carey in bed here, so it's just a very important point to make.
Okay.
Dictaphone in bed.
Yes, and this was a recording device we're talking about.
And it was a recording device. Yes. Google it for anybody who doesn't know what a dictaphone is, which of course they won't now because they use their phones.
Exactly, yeah.
But a dictaphone was a very legitimate tool.
Yeah.
Right? And so I got into bed with Mariah Carey and I started interviewing her in bed. And I swear to God, my children's like, the phone rang again. About 5 minutes into it, I'm sorry, Mariah, I'm going to have to take this. But I noticed it was one of my friends, Michael Smith, who's still a friend of mine, top barrister in Northern Ireland now, but still a friend of mine. And this is it, beep, beep. I was like, sorry, Mariah, I have to take this call. Michael, can't speak to you at the minute, mate. I'm in the middle of something. I'm in bed with Mariah Carey, but I'll give you a ring back after. And hung up.
Yeah.
I was like, what other job?
Exactly, yeah.
What other job on the planet could you say, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in bed with Mariah Carey.
Yeah.
It was just brilliant.
Okay, so give me 2 good examples there. Will Smith and Mariah Carey. Okay. Who did you not like?
Who
was the
me?
most
Ringo Starr destroyed
difficult?
me.
Really?
Ringo Starr destroyed me, and it was a phone interview, and I just found him obnoxious and rude and just wanting a fight.
Yeah?
Most people describe me that way. I have to admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the way, to me, he was Thomas the Tank Engine voice.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's a comfort zone for me. That's, my happy place.
But one of the Beatles as well.
But to me, yes. Allegedly. I mean, what did he do? Did they even plug his drum kit in? That's the big question. I still want an answer to that. But yeah, he was one of the Beatles, mate. But I'm 20 years old. I was 25 years old. The Beatles meant nothing to me. It was cool to me that you flipping narrated bloody Thomas the Tank Engine, right?
Yeah.
But he came on and he had this new album out.
Right.
It's like, well, what do you think of the album then? And of course, I never prepped for an interview. I might have literally Googled something if I knew it was a really serious, sensitive question about some divorce. And I didn't want to look stupid. But really, I didn't prep for an interview, and I'm pretty sure you haven't prepped for this. And the interview's fine, by the way, but, maybe, did you prep for this?
All I've got written down on my thing is names to remind me of photographs and stuff.
I don't know if I'm looking down the right barrel here. Yeah?
It's just words.
That's it. I mean, and that's the right way.
Yeah. Would you like to do the Late Late Show as a host?
I would do it better than Ryan Tubridy.
Right.
And I did put him on one of my front pages once when I was editing the Irish Mirror, and I'll never forget it. And my boss wasn't kind of happy with me because he was friends with Tubridy, so I get that. But it was the day that he interviewed Ronan Keating for the first time after the affair allegations had broken, and it was his first interview. And funnily enough, because it's RTE and Irish TV, and sure, we couldn't possibly be asking him about that. It's Ryan Tubridy. He went through the whole interview and didn't ask him about one thing to do with the affair.
Right, yeah, of course.
So I thought, that was on the Friday night. I was really annoyed because I'm a journalist and I make no apologies for it. I was really annoyed. And then I came in and I said to my team at the time, a couple of journalists who were working with me, I said, get on every forum about Irish TV forum and find out what the public is saying about it. And they were all like, has he really just bottled asking Ronan about the affair? Has he really just bottled it? And he had bottled it. So the next day, I came up with the front page. I could sense this kind of real hold on a minute, Ryan. We know that you're a bit of a we know you're a radio show and all that, but you're now doing the Late Late Show. You have to ask the hard questions. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I went on, made sure that the public agreed with what I thought, which they did seem to do. And around the front page the next day, full wipeout front page, as we call it. So nothing else on it. No little sports stories at the top, see page 18. No competitions. Get your free Legos at here. Full wipeout front page. And the headline came to me as I was driving to work that morning, The Hate Show.
Right? Yes, yeah.
And then with the banner under it, furious Tubridy dodges biggest interview, with Keating about affair.
Yeah. Okay. Has it ever become a time when you were worried about a front page story, when you thought, have I gone too far?
Every time.
Am I being too intrusive?
Every time. Robin, before I left the Mirror, I used to lie awake at night worrying about everything about that. When you're a good journalist, that's one who writes real stories.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay? Not somebody who sits and writes a TV column or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But by the way, if there are any TV columns that need written out there, I'm available for work. But do you know what I mean? Real journalism.
Yeah.
I used to lose sleep all the time. Used to lose sleep, lose weight, panic attacks. But all the greatest stories I lost sleep over because they were big and they meant something. And there were stories that I did that did really mean something. It wasn't all just flim-flam showbiz.
What about dealing with the really sensitive stuff? And I'm thinking Stephen Gately.
That was...
Because obviously you'd have been in the whole Boyzone journey before that. So
It's a really great question.
You were partly responsible in the Irish media for how successful Boyzone were.
Yeah.
You wrote about them all those years.
I had Louis Walsh's tool in that.
You got to know the guys really, really well. So when it came to Stephen's death, and I know you went out to Spain at the time, didn't you?
Robin, it was horrendous. It's a great question. So I was over in London at the X Factor with Louis, and because I'd be going over so often, and I think it must have been a time, I think maybe Owen Quigg was on the show at the time, but there was always somebody Irish on the show. So while that was while there was any Irish contestant on the show, I'd be over there every Saturday night, and I would sit in Louis' dress. I wouldn't even go into the studio anymore. I would just go to Louis would bring me in, or I'd meet Louis at the hotel before the X Factor. We'd get in his car, sit in his dressing room, have a couple of glasses of wine. He would get ready to go on. I'd watch it on a monitor. There'd always be people coming in, Harry flipping Styles, wondering, coming in and out all the time. You know the way it is in TV, and I'd just be sitting there. But then when the show was over, I get the big exclusive line from whoever the Irish contestant was. They come in, right here, let's work on this story, we'll work on that. So I'd been in London that night with Louis Walsh. And then Louis said, let's go out to Nobu for dinner. And I had a monster migraine. I said, I'm just going to go back to my hotel early and get some sleep, which I tried to do. So I left Louis' side, and 10 minutes later, I got a phone call. Did you hear about Stephen Gately? I'm like, what? Stephen Gately? I haven't heard anybody talk about him for about 2 years.
Yeah.
He's off the radar a bit. He's dead. I was like, get lost. I've just been stood with Louis Walsh 10 minutes ago, his manager. He's not dead. Stephen Gately's dead. He's just been found dead in his apartment in Spain. I rang Louis, told him. He didn't believe me, thought I was faking what. I didn't rush back to Louis or anything, I have to say. I got into the hotel room and I was like, holy crap. Now, I'd been with Stephen Gately about 3 weeks before at an airport. I flew over to Heathrow just to interview him at the airport before they went somewhere else. And I had a really good interview with him about his battles with depression and antidepressants and everything. But I knew he was in a really good place. And so I went back to my hotel room, and this is the danger of showbiz, Robin, and certainly what I found in my career. But it has to be this way, but people don't realise it. That is somebody, you quite rightly said it there, I knew him well.
Yeah.
I would sit in the Westbury Hotel with him and his boyfriend, Andrew Cowles, drinking with him. First night that they made their comeback tour, I was doing dance moves with them and everything. He was, and I really liked him. He's a really nice guy, good guy, and I knew him well. My first thought, as soon as I heard that, was to get back to the hotel, ring my boss, John Bow, which I did, John Kierans, tell him about it, and then say, I need to get on a plane to hit that villa, get near that villa, wherever it was, Mallorca, I think. First thing in the morning, we need to flip and be all over this. So by about 8 in the morning, I was on a plane to Spain, direct from London after being at the X Factor, and I was outside his house for a week trying to find out what killed him, had he taken anything, talk to witnesses, people in the apartment block who were threatening me. And I was actually also doing it for TV3 for their news crew because they hadn't scrambled anybody out there, so I was doing live broadcasts from outside. And I immediately went into story mode. Yeah. And that is somebody that I really knew well and really respected and liked. Yeah. But it was still a story. I was there. I was being paid to be there and get the story, right? But that was a real shocker. Yeah. It was a real shocker.
And you were supporting other media networks as well, because I remember being on the radio on City Beat at the time as well, and it was your stories that we were using to break the news to the Boyzone fans. But
during a time like that, Robin, honestly, I was doing 2 or 3 TV shows a day. This is even when I was just back in Dublin, and doing about 5 or 6 radios a day. Mm-hmm. And I tell you where I got that from. And a bit of it is work ethic, as you know, and you've got a great work ethic. But I've always had a really strong work ethic in the media, and I always remember when I was this wide-eyed, stupid little kid, basically starting out in showbiz journalism, and Boyzone were just finishing up, and West Life were taking their place. Yeah. And I always remember Louis Walsh making them do absolutely everything. There was no such thing as an interview that they wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. And I really learned. I thought, well, that must be the way. And I've never once turned down. Now I've been asked to do a lot of interviews. For whatever reason, I don't know why people get about me, but I have been asked to do a lot of interviews, particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, including stuff like that. They want somebody who understands showbiz to come on the radio and talk about this big showbiz story, and also I get all of that. I have never once turned down an interview in my life, even when the Daily Mail turned up at my door about 2 years ago and cold called me with a photographer and a reporter and to do a hatchet job on me about something, and I says, come on in and sit down. I have never once turned down an interview in my life, so I've never asked for any treatment, special treatment. I've done it to people, but I've always said, listen, you give me your worst, no problem. Mm-hmm.
Now, we know you spent a lot of time in Dublin. Yeah. And another kind of...
How much do you know about that?
another sensitive story that you'd had to have dealt with was Jerry Ryan. Of course, which was such a shock. I was in this building when I got the call to say that Jerry Ryan had passed away. That was a shocker as well, wasn't it?
So yeah, to put into context, a lot of your viewers will know this anyway, but Jerry Ryan was the Steve Nolan, I guess, of radio in the South, yeah?
Yeah.
And if you want to look at it as on an even bigger level than that, he was the Jonathan Ross.
Yeah.
So I was over at Cheltenham Races and I rang him and said, Jerry, we were all sitting around, my boss was over, and we were all sitting around a table drinking. Paddy Power himself was hosting our table.
Wow.
So we're at Cheltenham, the biggest racing festival on the planet. Paddy Power's paying for all the drinks and all the food. He had to run off early, so he gave me his gold card to pay for all the, to swipe and pay for it. So I was walking around Cheltenham the next day because Paddy Power had to go back to Dublin on an emergency, walking around Cheltenham Races, the irony, with Paddy Power's gold card. I was like, I'm getting back all that money I've lost from and I get massive gambling back in the day, horrendous levels of gambling, which would blow your mind. But I was making so much money, it was just couldn't spend it quickly enough.
Did it become an addiction then?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. It became an addiction as in I couldn't get, I will talk to you about Jerry Ryan in a second. It became an addiction as in I couldn't get any buzz out of anything other than gambling, and it was big money.
Yeah.
And then I got on top of that while I was still at the Mirror. It was the greatest thing I ever got on top of. Nobody talks about stuff like that. They should, because it does a lot of damage to people around you.
It happens when you're in high-powered, fast-paced jobs. You went down the gambling route. It's well known. I went down the alcohol route. So that's what happens, isn't it?
It doesn't have to happen.
No.
And I'm really about empowerment now and making great life changes. And I make a mess of my life every week because I'm called a man and I'm called a human being.
Yeah.
But what I now have is tool. But I'm very positive, and I always think it's never too late to make changes in your life. It's never too late to make something bad better. But I went down the gambling route, and the month that Cheryl Cole broke up from, I was writing for the Showbiz for the Mirror, but I was also doing loads of the celebrity magazines, because I was the only person close enough to the people they were looking for.
Yeah.
And the month that Cheryl Cole split from Ashley, I was doing my job in the Mirror, which was getting me really big money, and I think I tripled what they were even giving me in 28 days. So I was 27 years old, and in the month that Cheryl Cole split with Ashley Cole, I made £17,520. Wow. In 28 days. Now, I'm not saying this in a boastful way.
Yeah.
Okay? I have nothing to boast about in that department, but I was fiercely ambitious and I was well connected, and it was almost like if you can imagine a stockbroker, the likes of Jordan Belford now, one of my great heroes in life, who went down a really bad path, but one thing he was great at was making money. I was always really good at making money out of journalism, which most people weren't.
Yes.
Journalism was always seen as a bit of a thing. You sit down, you smoke your brains out, you're angry at the world, you drink whiskey, you get an alcohol problem, box ticked by Robin there. You get a gambling problem, box ticked by Paul Martin here.
Yeah.
And you're just mad at the world, and then you go back to your crappy little house. I lived in a huge big house, jetting off all over the place on holiday, and ridiculously making 17 grand in my best ever month, at 27. But how do you spend that kind of money when you can't get the kick anymore?
Exactly, yeah.
I did it because I love sport. I did it on gambling. But it wasn't right. And I was lucky enough that I completely got away with it to a degree, because there's a lot of gambling addicts will go out there and they'll lose everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They will lose everything because they may be on a normal, very minimum, modest wage, living a modest lifestyle. But I nearly lost everything, and that was respect of my family, love of, my wife, my self-respect. You self-loathe, don't you, when you develop addictions in life? You do self-loathe.
Yeah.
But the great bit about these things, Robin, and I'm not going to, I'm not interviewing you here, and I would love to interview you, by the way, one day. But the great thing about all these things and all these hardships, and as men, we keep them all quiet. But the great thing about them is this, and I'm really, and this is really how I've changed in the last 2 years, is the great thing is I love a good old-fashioned comeback.
Yeah.
Don't you?
Yes, yeah.
And I love a good old-fashioned overcoming all obstacles. People will talk about you behind your back. Yeah. They're saying, oh, Paul lost his job in the Mirror. That your wife may be really annoyed at you for something. And I'm the first person, by the way, who'll go and lie in a dark room for a week and feel really depressed. And I have battled issues like that as well through years as well, and not shave for 3 days and not eat and all that. I've been there and I've done it all, and I'm not feeling sorry for myself. But there's nothing better, is there, when you come out the other side of that and you start getting your mojo back a little bit?
Exactly, yeah.
And I'm always mindful, and I'm sorry, I don't want to turn this into with the God channel, and I'm not going to talk about God, by the way, so don't worry, don't freak out. But I'm not turning this into some feel-good channel. But I'm always mindful of this And I run this through my head every single day of my life, and it's because I am the most flawed person you'll ever meet. So I'm not sitting here talking about, I am this great success story. I am not. But I'm mindful of this, and I put it through my head every day, and I actually have it written out and stuck in my mirror in my ensuite bathroom. When I go in the morning, it's up there in the corner. I can't escape it even if I wanted to. No matter what happens in your past, no matter what happens in your past, you are not your past. Yeah. You are the resources and the capabilities that you glean from it. And that is the basis for all change. Yeah. And I live my life by that. Thank God, because like if it didn't, I'd be flipping like there's no hope for me now. And that you might say, well, that's a very convenient mantra. It's not a convenient mantra. It's a mantra that everybody should have. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody goes through bad times, alcohol problems, gambling, marriage breakups, get-togethers, you know. Great money when you're making 17 grand in 28 days and then wondering where your next paycheck is coming from. Exactly, yeah. We're all human beings, and now the difference with me is I'll talk about the fact that I'm a human being, whereas 2 years ago I'd be telling you just about what, you know, what amazing celebrity I would have been out having lunch with. Yeah.
Let's go back to Jerry Ryan and finish that story.
Right, so Jerry Ryan, he was a really good friend of mine. He was giving me stories and everything. He collapsed, he died in his house. As you know, he got up one morning, he didn't turn up to work. It broke my heart. It broke his listeners' hearts. Oh my God, the outpouring of grief. It was like Diana in Dublin, yes, right? Yeah. Again, what I will say about that is it then became a war, a tabloid war. And I'm pretty sure you're probably going to... I know what you're like because you're good at what you do, and that's why I hate you a bit too. But I remember an article on the internet, which I know is still there because some of my friends sent it to me the other day, and it was, the headline on it was a picture of me, and it was never in the, I think the headline was something like, never in the field of tabloid hackery has somebody stooped so low to gain so little. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the exact headline.
That's the headline.
Was it, right? Yeah, okay. You've seen it, and you've just lulled me into this.
I looked at it earlier.
Right, so you've lulled me into a false sense of security. Damn you, Robin, you beat me. So with that all in mind, you know, very good friend, somebody who's leaking me stories, somebody that I really had a lot of time. He was the king of the radio. Chris Evans said he only got back on radio after coming to Dublin on holiday and hearing him. Yeah. That's what got him back into radio. The tonality and the turn of phrase and all of that, you know. And he dropped dead. It became very clear within 2 days that there was going to be a tabloid war, and it was literally what could be the next thing, what could be the next thing. Any story, when somebody dies, any story is a story. So singing Fitz's, and Louis said, I've got a good story for you, Paul. Louis blinks at 1,000,000 knots an hour when he gets excited. Yeah, right? He has this blink, so it's like blink to the sky. This was like blinking gone mad, so I knew he was onto something. So he's like leaning into me across, you know, while he's eating his souffle, and he's like, Paul, I've got a great story for you. No, but it's a really good story. And, you know, Louis isn't a newspaper journalist, so sometimes the stories are great, sometimes he thinks he's got a great story and it isn't brilliant, you know. This was not a brilliant story, but I was under pressure. We're in 5 days into this tabloid war, and I definitely had got great Jerry Ryan stories, but I hadn't got the Jerry Ryan story, which was what everybody was trying to get. We didn't know what that was. And he said, Jerry Ryan's car is so tragic. It was on the Burlington Road where Jerry Ryan's house was, and we were on practically that in that area. So he said, Jerry Ryan's car is still in the driveway. His vintage car, it's such a sad sight. The whole property's been vacated. He's gone. He's been buried, but his car's still sitting there. And I thought, oh, kind of an interesting picture. The sad final, the final stand of Jerry Ryan, his famous 1975, whatever the car were. But then I thought, right, okay, it's a good story, but it's not an incredible story. It's a good story. So I went down to his house. And this is, you're talking about friends and how far will you go for a story and everything. I went down to his house. I noticed that the ground floor apartment where he lived was completely vacated, bar that car. And I noticed there was a bin, a massive big black bin lying, completely ajar with just hundreds and thousands of pieces of documents and stuff lying in it. And I don't know what came over me. I just went over to it and I just emptied it. And I was driving an X5 at the time, and I'll never forget flinging the X5 open. I had another journalist drive me down so that I wouldn't be technically, if had been seen, the person deliberately driving there to do this. Yeah. And it wasn't even my mind. And I lobbed everything into the front seat of the car, went back to the hotel, and it was like at the time he was dating a new woman. He'd gone through a very painful divorce, Melanie Verwood, and the first thing I put out was this card: "Dear Jerry, on this your 50th birthday, I wish for you to find true happiness, to find this, to find that, to the other." Your viewers are going to be sitting there saying, "What an absolute typical journalist hoking through bins." The next bit was pictures from his kids. "Daddy, you are the greatest dad ever. I cannot wait for our holiday." Da, da, da. And it was the most personal. Now, by the way, it had been binned.
Yes, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All of it had been binned. It
Yeah.
was going to never be seen again. So I took a decision. I came into the mirror the next morning and I said, look, I've got this stuff. I'm not going to go into how I've got it, but it's going to blow your mind. And we did pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And it was Jerry's incredible, you know, the love of his kids. Today reveal. It was the best Jerry Ryan story post-death. It was all the cards. It was the private letters. It was everything. And I tell you something, the new woman in his life rang me and gave me about 8 stories after that, even though I was printing her love letters, because she saw that I'd done it in a delicate way. But it's that quandary, isn't it? Was that a really evil journalistic thing to do? Or were those destined for the dustbin? All everybody was writing about was Jerry Ryan in this coke death.
Exactly, yes.
And suddenly they're opening a paper, looking at cards from the people who loved him, telling him what an amazing dad he was, what an amazing husband he was, lover. And I said, well, I'm going to get that out of it.
That's what was needed at that time, I think.
I think that's what was needed at that time. And people said, I remember a journalist, you know, I have friends, lots of rival journalists who were in other papers, and the news editors were coming in, some editors were coming in going, why don't we get this? And slamming it down. And I knew it was a great scoop. Another journalist in one of the, I think it was the Sunday Indo, their news editor came in and said, this isn't absolutely disgusting, isn't it? But I'm hearing it all back to me from a journalist who was in the Sunday Indo at the time. And apparently the news editor of the Sunday Indo said, let's shout it across the table, come on, if we could have got that story with all that, we'd be flipping, dancing a jig around here, let's get real. And they would have been. So you can never be, you know, just to talk about the Jerry Ryan thing, you have to do your job. And my job at that time was to get the best Jerry Ryan story I could possibly get. And that was it, bar none. And nobody equaled it.
We've talked a lot about Louis. We've got a photograph of you and Louis, which is going to pop up on the screen now.
Oh, God, that one.
The two of you on holiday
That
together.
one.
And I have to say, you make a nice couple.
I think Louis and I would make a nice couple, wouldn't I?
I think so.
I don't know if either of us are gay, you know, but we don't have to be nowadays, do you? We could be a transition or something, isn't it? Isn't that the new buzzword? Transitioning?
Yeah. You're in Miami in this photograph.
We're in
aren't
Miami.
you?
Louis has an apartment in Miami, and there was very well tried to test the method, Robin, which was once a year I get a big Louis Walsh interview, but the only time he could possibly do it, of course, was when he's in Miami. Or at least that's what I told him to say. And then, of course, my boss would sign me off to go to Miami to get the interview. So I got a free holiday in Miami. But yeah, I do. I spent a lot of time with him in Miami. It's his safe place. It's his happy place. He's got a lovely apartment up there, right on the top floor. And you know, that was the kind of lifestyle I was leading. It was great.
Another quick photograph here, Cheryl Cole.
Cheryl Cole, I'll tell you one thing about Cheryl Cole. I've done more stories on her probably than anyone I've done stories on the planet. Cheryl remembers everyone. She's got this incredible memory. First, I met her once about 13 years ago. Then I met her about 3 years later. She knew my name, who I was. I hadn't even interviewed her then. You're that guy, aren't you, from Ireland? She has got, and she's famed for that. She's got this real memory of everybody that she ever meets. I find her adorable. She looks great. Yeah. I am a big Cheryl fan. Okay. I'm not a fan of many celebs, as you know.
Okay, right. What happens then? You've done all these big stories over the years. You've been the youngest editor and all the rest of it. Then suddenly you find yourself on the front page of the newspapers for something that you've done. I'm talking speeding.
I thought you were going to say celebrity come die with me.
I'm going to get there in a second. I'm talking speeding first. 120.
Was it?
120 in an 80 zone while doing your paperwork at the same time. And you find yourself in the front of all these newspapers.
I don't know all about that, Robin, but I know you well enough to know you always have your facts right. So yeah, let's go with that. That was embarrassing, but quite funny. Not the speeding, okay? But, you know, I was driving a 6 Series BMW convertible with the roof down on a hot sunny day through Dublin, and I was, you know, 32, 31. And I remember the guards pulled me over. They said, you're perusing paperwork. It was actually a map. This is, you know, this is the stage you didn't have a phone that you stuck on.
Yeah.
I was on my way to TV3, but I do remember at that time I was starting to get quite well known in the South. You know, if I was going out places, people come and get pictures taken and all that because I was doing a lot of TV there. So I was like, you know, and I remember coming to the police station, there's 4 police officers, females at the windows, and they were looking at me. I was like, that's a bit weird. It's like they're waiting for me and it's been rung in. I'd been a bit mouthy to the cops, saying, this is ridiculous, you're only doing this just... And so they brought me in and threw me in a prison cell until I cooled off.
Right.
So now, that was a flipping come down of an ego, Mr. Big Ego, as they used to call me as well, as Mr. Showbiz. That was a come down. So I called off in there and everything, and then I had to post bail. So the way that happens when they post bail is they escort you across, they bring you out of the cell, you sign all the paperwork, and they escorted me through Swords Town Centre. And all the cars, beep, 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 there's your man from Exposed, on TV3, all right, there, Paul. But the two guards are either side of me in their high-vis jackets. They escorted me to the ATM to withdraw the 300 quid to pay my bail to get out of there that night. I was like, oh God, this is a flipping disaster. So then the following week I had to appear on what is basically a driving charge, which is a very minor thing and certainly not newsworthy. But that's when I realised the tables were starting to turn. Because I was in there and the court reporter was probably in there. I didn't see them, but I'm just wearing a suit and I'm in there and they're like, you know, talking to the judge, you know, he pleads guilty for this, fine and all of that, no problem. You know, we've all got speeding offences, certainly me. And 2 days later, I drove down to Dublin, went into the Applegreen station or whatever it was at the time to pick up the daily papers. And there was my big ugly mug on the front page, Mr. Showbiz caught speeding. 2 pages aside, front page, what he was wearing, what his hair was like. And I was like, oh God, I'm not that person. I am the person who writes this stuff. And then I realised I'm in trouble here.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The tail is wagging the dog now.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And in a way, I thought it was kind of funny too, if I'm being honest, that, you know, I was like, you know, God, must be a very slow news day for that paper. But then it went from that down to then Daily Mail starting to do front pages and the Evening Herald and even the Sun writing stories about me. And that's not cool, actually, because I am the show. My bosses pay me to write stories for the Irish Daily Mirror. Yeah. And every day we were coming in, there was another story in the Daily Mail about me.
We're running out of time. So we are.
Thank God for that. I've told you
far
too much.
We're going to finish on Celebrity Come Dine With Me. We have to do this because Brian Kennedy...
You don't have any red wine there, do you? Because it would not surprise me if you did pull that stunt.
I should have done this. Brian Kennedy's a mate of mine as well.
Right.
I want to know...
That's because you're nice.
I want to know what the truth is. Is this a big, whole PR stunt that you and Brian...
So he threw red wine over me on the last night of Celeb Come Dine With Me, and I haven't spoken to him since. Well, sorry, I did. It was on a chat show which he stormed off on.
Yeah.
So
are the two of you at war, or is this TV?
It's not TV, because we're not on TV together at the minute, are we?
No, you're not.
Right, he's not here, right? No. As far as I know.
Yeah, no,
is
he's not. He's not.
He here?
Brian Kennedy, ladies and gentlemen.
No. I found Brian Kennedy, your friend Brian Kennedy, but I'm always honest, I found him to be an egomaniac. But equally, if you Google it, you'll see his interview in the Evening Herald when I think he said, Paul Martin, so I'm saying it for him, Paul Martin is the most deeply unpleasant, egotistical, nasty person I have ever met. So I'm actually giving him airtime here. Yeah. That's what he says about me, okay? So I know, Robert, do you know one thing about me? I'm authentic, if nothing else.
Exactly, you are.
So I'm being honest with you. The answer to your question is no, it wasn't fake.
Okay, brilliant.
But you know something? I would take him out for dinner and have a laugh about it.
Good.
Because you have to move on. You have to move on in life, and you have to have a laugh, and you have to have a laugh at yourself. And I promise you, there's nobody laughs at themselves more than me.
I think we should. I think let's do another Come Dine With Me. You and him together.
Okay, well, you're cooking.
And I'll come there and sit in the middle.
No,
and I'll cook. I'll do the cooking.
Right, well, that's the deal.
Okay, Paul, you've always been open and honest.
Always.
And you've been open and honest in this interview. Thank you so much.
Thanks for suffering me.
Thank you.